Right now, though, the other big story nationally, first round of the U.S. Open at Pinehurst in North Carolina. And what a gorgeous golf course and what a tough test of golf it is. But we've got some very fine scores. In fact, we just had another 65 posted by Roy McIlroy. So Roy's got himself right up at the top of the leaderboard after a 5-under 65. Once again, top of the leaderboard, Patrick Cantlay, Roy McIlroy, 5-under 65. Ludwig Oberg, 66. Matthew Pavon, a 67. DeChambeau playing in. 2 holes to go. He's 3 under, tied for 4th. And Tony Finau, a 68. That's 2 under. And Tyrell Hatton is on the course, 2 holes to go at 2 under par as well. We welcome in M.J. Ward, international golf writer of great repute with Golf Today and other outlets around the U.K. and around the U.S., and he is there in Pinehurst at number 2, taking it all in. And good afternoon, MJ. How are you?
Well, it's a pleasure to talk to you, Phil, as always.
And I tell you, you got your golf voice going now. You got your
Jim Nance asked me if I could substitute, and I told him, I said, "Well, I'll see what I can do, Jim." So
nice.
I don't think Jim Nance is losing any sleep over my situation. So, in any event, yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. A lot of exciting things happened today at the golf course. Clearly, the McIlroy reemergence is always interesting to see, and really, it's interesting as a counterpoint with Patrick Cantlay, because if you can remember, there was these 2 guys that were having the Ryder Cup situation where a lot of things were going back and forth with each other, and you'll be curious to see if these guys happen to be paired, if that should come about on weekend play. But it was a very interesting day, and I think the golf course did an exceptional job of identifying the people who were playing well, and obviously not helping those who didn't play well. So I think all in all, it was a really good start to the 124th U.S. Open.
Well, you had 165 come in the early wave, 165 come in the late wave, and you look at Rory, bogey-free card for him. He birdied both par 5s, and he birdied the 18th. On a course like this, a par 70, where you only have 2 par 5s, how critical is it to birdie those par 5s, say compared to a course that has maybe, the typical 4 par 5s that you can go for?
Well, one of the things that really got McIlroy started on the par 5 side was, he chipped in at the 5th hole. So, that made a big difference in his round. He was in the garbage, in the junk weed after 2 shots. His 3rd shot came up short, and, he made a really fine play. But, when somebody's chipping into a hole, whether it goes in or not goes in, yeah, there's a degree of skill and obviously some luck. But it was really a good way to get a jump start to the round and to really get him motivated to keep moving forward on the day, and clearly closing it out, with a birdie. I thought that the pin placement on 18 today was extremely receptive. And I think it's fine, but I think you're going to see far different as we go along with some of the different pin placements that are in the area. And I think also if the golf course experiences the kind of continual dry weather, I mean, there may be a spot thunderstorm here or there. Maybe that might happen. But I think the golf course is going to get firmer, faster. It'll put a premium on certainly keeping the ball in play. Clearly the McIlroy story has been played endlessly. I mean, we're talking the last major, 2014. For a guy who won 4 majors by the age of 25, which is just remarkable. I've written on this many times. I mean, you'd hate to see McIlroy be the kind of guy who ends his career with 4 majors. But I will say this, Phil, there's no guarantees when majors are won or lost. So, there have been people who hit their strides at 32 and 34, and then all of a sudden you thought there was going to be more majors, and the spigot came up empty. So you can never guarantee what's going to happen, and obviously with only 4 bites at the apple, You really want to make sure that your game and the circumstances of how you're able to play can carry the day for you. So it'll be interesting to see, as things progress. And clearly, McIlroy is going to be hearing the same questions again and again. I think it was a beneficial situation, and maybe it's helped him in his disposition, the reconciliation with his wife. I mean, clearly, I think that's certainly an added plus that he doesn't have to, go through that himself personally. So we'll see what happens. I mean, there's a lot of golf to be played, and in any U.S. Open, you can never really count people out of this. I mean, by any means. A lot of things can turn. Tomorrow, McIlroy will be in the morning wave, and I think it'll be interesting to see what kind of situation can he do early. And it's also going to be interesting to see what people like Xander and Scheffler can do to recoup the shots that they lost today and see if they can really get back into the game.
Yeah. Further proof, and I've said this before, Chris at MJ, these superstar athletes, when they have turmoil in their personal life and then they have to go and perform, they seem to take it to another level focus-wise. It's amazing to me how many athletes at that level, the highest level, when they've got something going on out in their lives outside their sport, but then they have to go play their sport, they just excel because they're so focused and trying to close out the outside noise, and they're focused on their craft. And maybe this is something to do with how well Rory played today. Now, we have 16 in red numbers, and we have a total of 39 even par or under, with still some folks out there to finish up the opening round. So, will the USGA be happy with that figure, under par or even par or better, as we head to round two? I mean, in terms of how they like to make the course so difficult, is that a small enough figure to make them happy?
I think that, one thing I learned, I just wrote about this, and the USGA had a major press conference on this on Wednesday before the championship. I think they have moved away from the fixation of we must hold par as a score, because when you do that, you're taking golf courses and you're pushing them right to the envelope between what's considered to be a tough golf course and then what would be one that is going to be only navigated by luck. And you don't want to see skill replaced by luck and random situations that become all too common. So I think the mindset of the USGA, especially after the debacle at Shinnecock back in 2018, is not to get so caught up into that, but at the same time be aware of this is the U.S. Open. This is not the Travelers. This is not the Greater Greensboro. This is not any other regular event. So I don't think that the mindset of the current brass that's running the USGA is caught up with this, hey, they had too many scores under par. I think it's an appropriate number, given that there was really no wind to speak of. I mean, today, and the temperatures were great right from the very beginning. You have to have an opportunity, Phil, where if a man plays his best game, the golf course is going to yield a score. I mean, that's really what fundamentally has to happen. If you play a golf course and the guys play great and no one can shoot under par, fundamentally, probably something has been done to trick up the golf course, because these guys are that good and they can score when given an opportunity. So I think on whole, on balance, I would think that the USGA is pleased, and we'll see how the rest of the week plays out. But it's only the first round. It's not atypical for rounds to be low the first day, and then they start to sort themselves out as we progress, and the championship begins to start to add the pressure and all the things that go with it.
Sure.
Our golf insider MJ Ward with us here this evening on Sports Talk, coming to you live from Pinehurst side of the first round of the United States Golf Open. And MJ, have you seen a noticeable change in personality of Bryson DeChambeau? He's sitting there at 3 under par, right in the mix as he was at the PGA Championship this past month or so ago. I remember last year when the LIV Tour was really starting to get going, he and Brooks Koepka seemed to get most of the venom from the fans, but that doesn't seem to be the case anymore. Did he intentionally go out and try and change his personality to make him more lovable, for lack of a better term? Or do you think fans have just gotten to the point they don't care which tour you play on? If you're playing good golf, I like you.
Well, I think one of the things that I had heard that had come to mind is I think Bryson had heard the terminology that after he won at Wingfoot in 2020, and it seemed to be like we're going to be on this new wave of Bryson DeChambeau. From my understanding, I mean, some people had thought that, that Bryson had become irrelevant by going over to live and then starting to do all these circus shows with the World Long Drive Distance Championships and, all the sideshow stuff that goes on. And I think he probably took it to heart that he doesn't want to be considered irrelevant. Bryson DeChambeau is just not the guy who is going to be hitting big tee shots like across the sixth hole at Bay Hill to cover the corner of the dog leg, and all of a sudden, that's it. That's the ball game. So in other words, it's all show, but no real substance. And I think he's beginning to understand that he's going to have to really demonstrate what he can do on the golf course. And I think this could be the second wave of a Bryson DeChambeau emergence. And I think really when he hears the term that he was irrelevant, I think that kind of lights a fire underneath him that says, I'm not irrelevant. He played well in the Masters. He played well in the PGA Championship. I think he's a tremendous talent. I think there are some people who are going to be put off by him because he might come off a certain way that may not be receptive to certain people. But I think he plays to his emotions and his strength, and I think that identifies with a lot of the fans who are looking to root for somebody that they can say, hey, this guy's got some real connection to the fan base. He does spend the time signing autographs. He's not aloof in that capacity. And I think maybe this is probably the second opportunity for him to get back into the fray to demonstrate what he did at the U.S. Open a few years ago.
All right, let's get our quick Tiger talk in. 74 for him, 4 over par. He birdied the first hole, which was his 10th, and then a couple of bogeys at 16 and 17, 3 bogeys at 1, 2, and 4, a birdie at 5, which is the par 5 over there. A bogey at 8, and he parred in at number 9. Had to run in a putt, as I recall. If I remember watching that hole, par 3, I think his drive was on the green, but kind of at that point of the green where it wasn't high enough up to hold. It rolled back down, but he gave it a nice chip and made the putt. I believe that was the hole I was watching. But anyway, 74 for him. He seemed to be walking well. I don't see any physical issues with him from the standpoint of his legs or his knees or a limp or anything like that. Just, is he ever going to get the game back to where he can compete?
Phil, let me just mention to you, there's an old adage, I think it was said by Lee Trevino many years ago. He said, when, like dogs chasing cars, when pros putt for pars, they don't stick around long. And,
That's good.
And Lee Trevino is, he's probably one of the best at coming up with these kind of quips, but I will tell you that's very, very true. Mm-hmm. I mean, the Tiger was really fighting it. He could not get into the greens in regulation. He did have a bad situation happen at number 9 that you alluded to. His situation is a very simple one. I've said this before. I think you guys have discussed it already. He needs to play more, but in order to play more, he puts his body at risk. So the real question is, how can he be able to play at the very highest level with limited repetitions and high-level competition? I just don't see how that's done. I just don't. And I think at his age and where he's at, you're going to have to put some kind of score together. I mean, for example, tomorrow, hard to say what the cut will be with the low 60 and ties, but you could say conservatively you're going to have to be someplace around +2, +3. So he's going to have to go under par probably tomorrow. I don't think weather conditions are going to be relevant, so that's not going to be the issue. But you got to get on to these. I mean, this is the same thing that happened in a different way with Scottie Scheffler. I mean, you got to get in the right position so that you can get on the green and have looks at birdie. You can't be looking at 15-foot par putts almost on every other hole and think that you're going to be able to hang in on this, indefinitely. And, at some point, the putter doesn't respond, and then all of a sudden you're not making any birdies. You really can't put the kind of numbers that you should have on the board. He did look physically fit. He hit balls after his first round, which is kind of unique in the sense of usually Tiger shuts it down. I just think the question is, he needs to play more. And I think he's being smart, if you will, or maybe too cautious about putting some more reps in to play. If he had played the Memorial last week, it might have been a good opportunity for him to get some reps in prior to coming, to the U.S. Open. But when you just cherry pick off and think that you're just going to jump into a major championship, it's just going to be extremely hard to do. It'd be like saying you're going to just jump into the NBA Finals, or you're just going to jump into the Super Bowl, okay, and start thinking you're going to be throwing touchdown passes. He just doesn't have enough reps to really do what's necessary, and I think he's in that quandary that he doesn't want to push it any harder than he does, and as a result, he's caught in the middle, and what you see is the outcomes of shooting 74. It'd be interesting tomorrow to see how well he can do it playing in the afternoon. He's going to probably have a better idea where the cut is going to be when he's out there in his round tomorrow. So it'll be interesting to see how he gauges himself about how far he wants to push things and see whether or not he can play on the weekend.
All right, MJ. Thank you, man. Great stuff as always. Look forward to talking to you same time tomorrow from Pinehurst number 2. We appreciate it.
Thanks, MJ.
Guys, always a pleasure to you. And like I said, like pros putting for pars, they don't last too long. So always keep that Lee Trevino quote in mind.
That's stuck in my head.
You guys have a good one.
Thank you very much. I wouldn't know about putting for par, maybe putting for double bogey.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't last very long either.